Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode of Wise the Dome TV. Today I have a very, very special guest. I'm a huge fan of this guest's YouTube channel and his scholarship and commentary. And uh, Brother Rashad Abdul-Rahmaan, thank you for coming and spending time with us here. I just want to kind of introduce you to the people that may not be familiar with you. Um, you did study under the late Imam Muhammad in Quranic, Arabic, Tafsir, and comparative religions, and also studied philosophy and Islamic studies at Medina Institute. You served in educational and leadership roles at Masjid Sultan Muhammad in Milwaukee, Muhammad Schools of Atlanta, and so you're the author. And I ordered the new book, The Concept of Blackness in Al-Islam, and
Yeah.
my app said that it is in transit, so I
Oh,
should have
good.
that. Yeah, I should have that soon. But Rashad Abdul Rahman, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
So if you can, again, I kind of like to kind of start from the beginning a lot of times, whenever I'm interviewing someone for the first time. Can you talk about your own personal journey within Islam and, maybe how it's grown or evolved over time? But yeah, just kind of like your origin story.
Yes, well, my family, specifically my parents, they were in the Nation of Islam. So, my biological father was a member of the Nation of Islam. My stepfather, and then my mother, she wasn't in she was like what we call, I guess you would call it, nation adjacent. Like
Mm-hmm.
she was talking to a brother who was in the nation, but she said she really didn't accept all of the teachings. But in 1975, when Imam Muhammad, who at that time was chief minister, Wallace Muhammad, something like that. When he became the leader of the Nation of Islam in 75, that's when she joined, because right away his messaging that they would put on the paper, the community back then, it was called the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. Um, when she read his articles, what he had to say resonated with her. But my father, they were members of the Nation of Islam proper.
Hmm.
So we are, like myself, my siblings, we are really what you would consider to be first generation Muslim.
Hmm.
So the Nation of Islam began in 1930. So from 1930 to 1933, a man by the name of Farad Muhammad was the teacher. He was the teacher and the founder of the movement. There's a lot of mystery surrounding him, but there's a lot of clarity as well. There's some things that we do know. But the short end of it is, in 1933, when he left, he had, by that time it was already established that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was his, that was the one he wanted to that was his right hand, so to speak.
Hmm.
So from 1933, as a matter of fact, the pioneers, they say that the last lecture that they saw, Mr. Farad, he said something along, it was a big meeting in Detroit. He said something along the lines of, I've carried you as far as I can go,
Hmm.
as far as I need to. And then he said, "Here, Hear, Elijah." And then he actually left the building. He just walked off the stage. And
Wow.
then Elijah Muhammad gets up and begins to speak. And that was the last time they say they saw him. There was a little bit of drama in the beginning. Elijah Muhammad's brother, Khalat Muhammad, wanted to be the leader. So he actually was trying to kill the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for some time. And he was moving on the run a little bit. But eventually he becomes established as the leader. And then that movement continues from 1933 all the way until 1975, when Imam Muhammad becomes the leader of the Nation of Islam, the lost found Nation of Islam in the wilderness of North America. So there were children born within that movement. And we have some members in our community that their family goes back. Like I have a student who his great grandfather was in the Nation of Islam.
Wow.
One brother in the Philadelphia area, his parents were in the nation. I forget how many generations it goes back, but they go back to Noble Drew Ali, which is before the Nation of
Wow.
Islam.
Hmm.
So they just stayed in these Muslim movements. But for me, I was born several years after Imam Muhammad becomes the leader. So we were born and raised in Islam. So that by this time, the community is transitioning into what is considered what they call in the world Sunni or Orthodox Islam. Um, and that growing up, I was born and raised in Chicago. In
Hmm.
Chicago, in the Nation of Islam, is headquarters. It still is really under Minister Louis Farrakhan. Um, and the majority of Imam Muhammad's life, he lived there. He moved in a couple of times, but he eventually came back. So we would grow up, having to pray and read the Quran and fast and stuff like that. Basic Muslim practices.
Hmm.
Um, but in our homes, back then, you would play tapes. So I can remember waking up, we had to get ready for school, but my stepfather would be playing tapes of Imam Muhammad's lectures, driving in the car, playing
Hmm.
lectures, and then actually having to go hear him as young people to give lectures. I never really took it too serious. Something about Islam, there's a realness to it. There's something about Islam when you start to read the Quran and learn it. It's like, okay, this is actually serious.
Hmm.
It's real. So I always felt that Islam was the true religion, was the correct religion. I just didn't want to necessarily be a Muslim. I
Hmm.
thought that, especially coming up, I mean, it was much more difficult in the '90s than it is now. Like Islam was cool, so to speak, because you probably had like the conscious hip hop people, but they were more like five percenters,
Hmm.
5% adjacent. I know
Hmm.
Wu Tang Clan and what's
Brand
the album
Nubian
called?
and
Yeah, those
mhm,
guys.
mhm.
When I'm thinking of Wu Tang's double CD
Oh
that
yeah, Wu
came
Tang
out,
Forever.
Wu Tang Forever. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. Then, but like you said, Brand Nubian.
Mhm.
Even I, but now, but back then you didn't have like Tupac or Snoop do that. But now you have like the equivalent, like a little Dirk and those guys.
Mhm.
Muslim. So it's much more, and it's trending more. Obviously, with social media, we didn't really have that, so it was a little bit rough. And I remember being young. I mean, we would fast, So when we were fasting in school, I went to a public school or
Mhm.
magnet school, they called it. You're not eating lunch with everyone. Your
Right.
name is the only name. Everyone else is Derek Wilson, and your name is Rashad Abdul-Rahmaan.
Mhm.
You have to explain things. So, and then you have to pray.
Mhm.
And then we were a working class family, like the majority of black Muslims. We were poor people.
Mhm.
Not poor in an absolute way. Most Americans aren't really poor by world standards, but to
Right.
our standards, we think we're poor. So as a child, children are very practical. It's like, what do you mean? We got this beat up car, but we got to pray all of this. We got to do all this
Mhm.
prayer and all this fasting. So I didn't really. So while I knew Islam was the truth, it didn't satisfy. I wasn't satisfied. I guess I would say from a practical standpoint.
Mhm.
But I always had questions. I always was inquisitive. And I guess I would say I was always. I didn't like to accept authority over my thinking. I guess what we
Mm.
would call now a free thinker.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it that way, so it wasn't until I got older, like 19,
Mhm.
that I realized that yes, we were a working class family or poorer, but I had friends in my block. I had friends from high school, and I could clearly see that their life was drastically different from mine.
Mhm.
Though we lived on the same block, though we lived in the same neighborhoods, when you went into their house, it was chaos.
Yeah.
I had a friend, the house over, his mother, single mother, his sister was special needs.
Mhm.
Not so much she couldn't move around, it was more mental. I don't know what the particular condition was, but what we used to call people with challenges, mental challenges
Mhm.
in the neighborhood growing up. And I remember like she was known in the neighborhood because the boys would just take advantage of her.
Mm.
They would have sex with her.
Mm.
And his mother, I remember every weekend a man would come. His mother was a mistress, basically. The man would come. He had a wife, but he was spending the weekends taking his mother. And he like knew this.
Mm.
He was several years older than me. There was never any food in his house. The
Mhm.
furniture was just raggedy. The house was just raggedy. And that was like common. There was a guy across the street from me. We used to make fun of his house, me and my brothers and sisters, because his house used to just stink. It just had a foul smell. And I remember coming in my home, and you know how it is growing up as a young black man. I don't know if I'm sure they still go through it, but you kind of, most of us go through sort of an angry black man phase. You're mad at the
Absolutely.
world because you're trying to figure yourself out. You're trying to
Hmm.
figure out personal things, life things. You know, I guess in retrospect, it's hormones going to work, you know, and it's just maturity. And then, of course, for us, how we grow up, there are not many outlets to channel what you're going through and to find. And we don't have many role models. We don't have a lot of males present to really walk us through. Even the males that are present, black men don't talk like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
We don't process our feelings. So going through a regular black man experience, and I remember just coming into my house one time, one day, and you know, my mother, you know, you know how the old school black women are. They have plants everywhere.
Hmm.
It's jazz music playing, and we didn't have the best furniture, but she's a seamstress, so she would sew these beautiful coverings and just
Hmm.
put them on the pillows and stuff. Like she made a beautiful home, bookshelves, and I remember my mind was like, my thought process was really like, wow, what am I mad at? What am I mad about?
Right.
Because I was literally, it just hit me because I had just come from a friend's house, and it just hit me when I came into the environment. It smelled good. So that was one of the beginning points that I could recall that started me on the path of wanting to take the religion seriously.
Hmm.
So I made the decision close in this same time frame to start studying. As a matter of fact, this friend that I was just referring to, you know, he wanted to be in the Nation of Islam, but he couldn't. You know, he liked women and alcohol and weed too
Yeah.
much. He had a friend who was the same.
Hmm.
And then there was another neighbor on my other side. He was a Hebrew Israelite.
Hmm.
And him and his friend would come over, but they, we all liked that stuff. So, and I just remember, but we would read the Bible, we would read the Quran, we would read Message to the Black Man, we would debate. And I just took it seriously.
Mm.
I think a lot of them were just still playing. They were in play.
Yeah.
Well, I really took it seriously. And I reached the point where I started to go to the masjid again. You get dragged as a child, but as an adult, you have to make the decision. So I made the decision to start going. I entered into college, Chicago State University. And I remember like going to Bible study. There was a
Hmm.
Hebrew Israelite girl there. Not this new group with the purple, but it was the old, like the ones we have in Chicago, Soul Vegetarian. There's
Right.
another. They got their restaurant here in not here in D.C., but in Atlanta we have one. So it was other Hebrew groups,
Hmm.
and I remember just enjoying. I was into it.
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening, my mother, she let me know. So after a while, spending the summer perhaps going to the masjid, and I remember, as a matter of fact, this is a funny story too. I ended up, my brother, he was like, man, he'd been talking about Daytona Beach for a long time. You got to come, you
Hmm.
got to come, you got to come. And I'm like, man, I don't want to, So he ends up taking me. Now, I never knew what he was talking about. Man, and it was Sin City, brother. I mean, it was Sin City. I was like, wow. So I realized that I had to go the right way that weekend because I just remember, um, I just couldn't. It just didn't settle. I wasn't
Hmm.
settled. I'm like, no, this is not right. And
Yeah.
I saw it. And I think by that time they were complaining about because Daytona, you got blocks and blocks, it's a strip, blocks and blocks and blocks of hotels. At this time when I was there, it was mainly men,
Mm.
and you had women walking down in bikinis, and the men would be groping them, and some of the girls would pull their stuff up, and it was just Sin City. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? I mean, it just was Sin City. Those girls had no problem taking their clothes off. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes, and I just remember just that simple voice, like this ain't right. Like where's this gonna lead? Like what are we gonna
Yeah.
become after all this is said and done? So when
Hmm.
I came back from there, I remember even being more firm in my resolve. So fast forward maybe a few more months, maybe by this had to be because all of what I'm explaining now is like from let's say 18, 19 into 20, like whatever that fall
Yeah.
semester is of college. So but prior to that semester, it was summer, and my mother let me know that Imam Muhammad himself was actually conducting classes for young people in Islamic studies, which is very rare It would be the equivalent of like in the nation, Minister Farrakhan conducting classes specifically for the young people in his community. Like
Right.
hear from me directly.
Hmm.
So that's what he was doing. And I just so happened to live in Chicago, so I just went. And when I went, I was hooked from day one. You know, the profound way in which he explained the religion, the clarity that I saw, and it really just helped me. But by this time, I had already begun to read certain books on what do you call them? I guess back then we used to call them
Yeah.
Afrocentric conscious books.
Hmm.
And a lot of those early authors like Anthony Browder quoted a lot from Dr. Naim Akbar. But Dr. Naim Akbar was a student of Imam Muhammad,
Mm.
which is not known. I mean, a lot of people don't even know Imam Muhammad's relationship with Malcolm, how
Right.
Malcolm was profoundly influenced by Imam Muhammad in terms of his spiritual outlook. So that kind of just set me on the path. So to really study, and I've been on that path ever since. So after Imam, so I'm in his class from about '03 to '08, no '07, '08 he passes away.
Hmm.
'09 I end up in Milwaukee to work for the school because through my education process under him, I'm wanting to serve community now. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Serve the Muslim community in its advance. It's the African American Muslim community. So I go to Milwaukee where we have a school, and then in late 2014, early 2015, I got the invitation to come to Atlanta, which is where we have our biggest school and we have our biggest masjid.
Mhm.
And that's why I have been for 9 years. I resigned last year, as a matter of fact.
Mhm.
But between coming to Atlanta and resigning, that's when I decided to begin to put together content to put online. Started to write books. We started an institute because I had continued after I did more Islamic studies with others. Other institutes that were available just to grow in Islamic knowledge and grow in understanding. So that brings us to where we are today, really.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, again, for the people who aren't familiar, I mean, you have amazing content, and I definitely want everybody who is interested in this type of thing to hit the subscribe button. Make sure you support because you are your commentary on different topics within Islam is really dope. And so, one thing you kind of mentioned about Malcolm and Imam Muhammad, I'm going to get back to that,
Yeah.
but because I had never heard that before. But I would the book, The Concept of Blackness in Al-Islam. It's again, I have ordered it. It is on the way. But for those who are watching, can you kind of give them an overview on what the book is about and what kind of inspired you to write it?
Sure. So the book really the what it's about is like explaining what the concept of blackness and Alice Law. So I guess proceeding from that, like why write about
Mhm.
that? And the issue is
Like literally
so
like the color black, right?
yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
black book. Like so
Yeah,
he's talking
yeah.
about blackness. So so the issue is so going back to the Nation of Islam,
Mhm.
Malcolm, most converts to Islam today who are African American, perhaps not as much now, because what I mentioned about the little Dirks of the world, that and even this what's happening in Gaza, that has brought in a huge influx of Muslims.
Mhm.
But prior to that, most black people, many black people, when you ask them, hey, what brought you into Islam? I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. So he's still doing da'wah in a way, bringing people in. And everyone knows, well, from a certain generation at least, knows Muhammad Ali.
Mhm.
Even the movie X, for people who are of Generation X or millennials, that movie was very impactful. It was a cultural moment, sort of how for millennials and Gen Z, Black Panther perhaps was. Black Panther, I think, was a bigger cultural moment, but Malcolm X was definitely something in the '90s. So and then of course we talked about the rappers in the 90s. And if there's any one figure that the rappers would always show deference and respect to, would be Minister Farrakhan. That's
Oh
just
yeah.
a fact.
Hmm.
From the 80s all the way into the early 2000s, to the degree that he could call meetings with them,
He was squashing beefs.
squashing beefs, like
Hmm.
to the point where one rapper said that y'all gonna make Farrakhan call me to squash this beef. Like he said it more
Hmm.
eloquently, but that's like a known thing.
Hmm.
And the Million Man March, which was another major cultural moment. I forget what that was, 95 or 94 or something
Hmm.
like that. Over 1 million men march on Washington. No bloodshed, no violence. Like that was. This is at a time where we think of crime now, but in terms of the murder rate, crime in the cities was at its height in this time. And Minister Farrakhan was able to make that type of call and have those types of results. So I'm saying that just to say the Nation of Islam has been profoundly impactful in Black America.
Right.
That's just a fact. Whether we want to give them credit as being real Muslims, and those types of discussions that you hear in Islamic circles, at least, that's not no one no one in Black America takes that serious, because people don't even look. If you feed me, you feed me. You
Right.
get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So if I'm starving, I can be a staunch Christian, but if I'm starving to death and a Hindu has a plate of food, I'm gonna eat that food.
Hmm.
So that's what a lot of people don't get about the Nation of Islam. And this presence of the nation, it even how I'm explaining now, it was actually weaker in the 2000s and the 90s and the 80s. It's weaker than it was in the 60s and 70s. The Nation of Islam was sort of like the big brother to the Black community.
Right.
It was the Nation of Islam. As a matter of fact, one of the stories that Imam Muhammad shared with us is that he met James Brown,
Mm.
and he thanked James Brown for the song "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud."
Hmm.
And James Brown shared with him that he said it was your father, Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that inspired that song, because most
Wow.
old school Blacks will tell you, like if you speak to our grandparents, great grandparents, you can argue with a Black man all day. One of what was fighting words in our argument? You talked about my mama, or if you called me Black.
Right. Right.
To call another Black person Black was seen as like you hitting below the belt. So we come from a history where being called Black, we didn't like it. It was offensive. We suffered from self-hatred. So the Nation of Islam instilled in us a sense of pride and dignity in being Black.
Yes.
Black people on the whole, like now we call ourselves Black Americans and all of this. We didn't call ourselves that prior to the Nation of Islam. Not
Mm.
on the whole. We,
Hmm.
we were Negro, we were colored, we were Afro American, African American. Just recently we've been called Black. Now, a part of the role of the Nation of Islam, as we understand it, it was medicinal. Because, of course, here we are. Like there's a famous lecture of Malcolm saying things like, "Who taught you to hate your lips and your nose and your hair texture, etc." So, this is a powerful psychology that exists inside of a people to dislike their own natural features. No other people have that.
Hmm.
So, the Nation of Islam comes as a medicine to instill in us a sense of pride about ourselves. The reason why I say it's a psychology is because the language of the Nation of Islam is born out of a type of mythology and a theology that sort of exaggerates
Hmm.
the beauty of our features. They're
Hmm.
divine. You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Right.
And the whites and all things white are from the devil. I'm oversimplifying it, but
Hmm.
it was a methodology that was used. When Imam Muhammad becomes the leader, he begins to explain that Farad Muhammad was a man of profound wisdom in scripture. And what he was able to do is extract from scriptural language, form the language of the Nation of Islam, give it to us in a way that would meet our immediate psychological need. And when the time was right, also set the language up so that it can be translated into a higher reading. Now, he's not the first one to do this. One of the earliest lessons Imam Muhammad gave And you can still, I found a clip relatively recently of a historian talking about this, is of the Aryans and the Dravidians.
Mm,
The Dravidians were the original inhabitants of the Indus Valley.
hmm.
And they had in their religious theology, they had the idea of the children of the light and the children of the dark.
Wow.
Now, in their religious theology, it had nothing to do with color.
Hmm.
Darkness was ignorance, light was enlightenment. And the Aryans tried to invade the Indus Valley. The Dravidians laid them to waste. The Aryans retreated. The Aryans discovered that what they could do was enter into their religious teaching, influence the direction of their religious language and their religious teachings. So what they ended up, they changed the interpretation. They entered as students, they became teachers, and they altered the understanding of the Dravidians, that the children of the dark were the black skinned people and the children of the light were the light skinned people
Mm,
like the Aryans.
hmm.
So generations later, when the Aryans come to attack, they win because the Dravidians already have in the back of their mind and
Mm.
their subconscious, these are divine people.
Right.
So race being used as a tool for dominance
Hmm.
is something that has been existing in the world. It was done with the church. Mr. Farad is addressing that. But just like the Dravidian language, it can be read on the surface, white, black, light, dark. It also has an inner meaning, ignorance, illumination, so on and so forth. Imam Muhammad, when he becomes the leader, he begins to translate the language of Mr. Farad to show us how it has a higher reading, a higher understanding. What has happened in recent years, to be honest, I would say within the past 10, 15 years, there has been a movement of Muslims, African American Muslims, who primarily they've converted in this recent time. And they are writing and they are teaching and they're putting out language that really reflects, I would say, a Nation of Islam sentiment. I don't even want to put it to the Nation of Islam. I would just say it's just a sentiment. What I mean by this is they're putting out language that wants to lift up blackness
Hmm.
as somehow being superior.
Mm.
And they're doing it in the name of Islam. So I'll give you a good example. One of the verses that I address in the book, the verse that says that Adam was created from black mud.
Right.
And you'll hear this on, you hear this in social media. Well, for the students of Arabic, the word doesn't mean black.
Mm.
That's the translator saying it's black mud.
Hmm.
And the word is called is hama'in mesnun. Mesnun means fashioned into shape. Hama'in is the word they translate as black mud. It just means mud. Now, it is a kind of mud that when like if you ever make compost.
Hmm.
If you put the stuff, the more rich the soil it gets, it does get darker. But
Right.
the word hama'in is not an adjective. It's never used to describe something as black.
Mm.
Aswad is black. So
Right.
you'll never say like a hama'in pin or
Mm.
hama'in dog. No, you just say aswad. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So and it could also mean hot or heated. And
Hmm.
when something gets heated, it gets darker. So black mud, some say stinky mud. Another
Mm.
translator says black stinking mud because a lot of that, like compost, when it heats up, it gets stinky too. So if
Right.
you're going to take one meaning, you got to take it all.
Right. Right.
And,
Right.
and 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 that's one thing. The second thing, I actually give this argument in the book. The ingredients from which something is made doesn't necessarily mean that once the thing is made, it reflects the ingredients. We come from sperm and egg.
Mm.
We don't look like sperm. I don't have the same color as sperm. I don't feel like sperm. You get what I'm saying? So it's just a weak argument. It's just a weak argument. And it is framed upon this notion of let's affirm blackness because racism exists in the Christian world, racism exists in the Muslim world. And to be true, some of these people who put forth these arguments, they are saying this part correctly, which is, I think it's like 75+% of the stories in the Quran take place in Africa.
Mm.
So so I'm with that, but at the same time, while I'm with that, we have to avoid exaggerations. So I put forth another argument that we put forth in the book, that Adam, though I'm rejecting this verse that he was made from black mud, not only does it not necessarily, it shouldn't necessarily be translated that way. I'm saying that that's not evidence that he was black. But at the same time, I'm saying he more than likely was black, but not because of that verse,
Got you.
but because of a very simple reason.
Hmm.
If you can imagine the first man coming into the world, he can't make clothes, he can't build a house because he doesn't have any tools. You got to learn all of that stuff.
Hmm.
You can't put a naked man with no tools, no fire, no anything in the middle of cold Europe. He's going to die. He
Right.
has to be able to survive to even learn how to do things in a warm climate. And the warm climate darkens the body. He has to be dark.
Mm.
It's a very simple reason.
Hmm.
So, and why is that important? Because we want to preserve, like, we don't want to misconstrue or twist and turn the meanings of God's communication just to fit something in our mind. Let's just read it for what it is.
Yeah.
And at the same time, let's be truthful from a scientific perspective. The first man had to be dark because, or at least the evidence points to. So I'm
Mm.
addressing those types of issues because there's been a sort of a set of arguments put forth by a set of thinkers who are Muslim, but they want to what we call it, or we consider it to be a false blackness. It's
Mhm.
like this false black pride.
Right.
Um, um,
It's like
and
if you're gonna, it's like if due to the fact that there is racism within the Islamic community, racism within the church, it doesn't mean that we can't be right and exact in how we explain the concepts within said religion.
exactly. You know, and I think African Americans, we have to be very careful because we are a people who have learned to adapt.
Hmm.
We adapt and we adapt to dysfunction by way of dysfunction. So it's normal now. Like you're dating a woman or you're meeting a girl. Or how many children do you got? How many baby daddies you got? How many baby mamas you got? That question has never been asked by humans
Hmm.
for the past 30 million, however long we've been here. That's not a normal question.
Mm.
But we have just adapted to the fact that we just have so much sex outside of wedlock. It's just assumed we all come with babies. Um, we our diet, the black diet, you know, pig knuckles. Like people don't eat pig knuckles. That's the slave diet, and we turned it into a delicacy to our credit because we have had to adapt. So we don't want to be. These are part of, again, I'm using the word psychological. These are the psychological after effects or remnants of what were put upon us. We
Yes.
don't want to really come into Islam with that same. We want to let Islam address the problem. We don't want to put the problem onto Islam. Um, so that's it. So what does blackness mean? What is the concept of blackness? Because scripture does, like I mentioned about the Dravidians and the Aryans, religions do. The Bible has it. All of these sacred traditions, the Buddha says, my mother is black.
Mm.
And most people say, oh, see, Buddha was a black man. But his very name means the enlightened one.
Hmm.
And when you study world myth, this is one of the things Imam Muhammad would do with us. And, you know, those of us who are his students, who seriously and have diligently studied his commentary on Quran and religion, you know, we've engaged in this study enough to kind of know it from an academic perspective. All of these mythologies sort of have the same motifs, but they
Hmm.
all come out of a reading of the natural world.
Hmm.
So in biblical tradition, this is the Jews, the Christians too, and in Islamic tradition, the 24-hour day begins at night.
Mm.
Life for us begins when the mother gets impregnated. In the Quran, the description of the life inside of the womb, God says it's in three veils of darkness. He says he created the darkness and the light. So darkness is not a negative thing. Darkness is the condition that precedes light.
Hmm.
When the baby comes into the world and takes its breath and becomes conscious, because if it doesn't breathe, it's stillborn if you can't get it to breathe. When it becomes conscious, consciousness is just like when you're asleep and you awake, you are conscious. We wake when there's light out.
Right.
We go to sleep when it's dark, unless something else is going on. So these things have meanings, and the meanings go back to the natural processes of the universe.
Hmm.
The universe itself, like if you look at pictures of space, it's primarily blackness.
Right.
And the natural or the universe as God made it has an order, has a beauty to it, has an obedience to it.
Hmm.
The original human life that comes from the womb of mother, it has a nature, it has an obedience, it has potential. So all of these meanings now become associated with blackness
Hmm.
in scripture.
Hmm.
So when Buddha said his mother was black, it refers to something beneath the surface. When the angel Gabriel in Bible, he overshadows Mary, and then she becomes pregnant with Jesus Christ, who's the light of the world.
Hmm.
Shadow is black. It
Hmm.
specifically says the angel overshadowed her.
Hmm.
Most people don't know nighttime. Like you can look this up. Night, like when we experience night, is technically the shadow. The sun is striking the earth, but where we are turns away from the face, so it casts a shadow. So the angel overshadows Mary. She becomes pregnant with the light of the world. God says in the Quran, the night overshadows the earth. Then he brings forth the light of the day. So darkness and light. And so I go into those types of descriptions.
That's a motif that you really see a lot, as you mentioned, in mythologies and religions across the world.
Right.
Dark and light. Um,
That's right.
One thing I saw you on Jubilee.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so when I was watching it, right, I didn't know you were on there whenever I clicked on. And then I was like, "Oh, this brother Rashad. All right, I'm definitely gonna watch now." And
Yeah.
there were some answers that just made me think and about experiences, reflections on uh, the what the ideas of or certain interpretations of religion.
Yeah.
And because here's one thing, the thing that really kind of got me right is when I forgot what the question was, but um, I know I forgot what the question was, but I know that the answers are what stuck with me. And one of and the answers from the on the Christian side was based on a fear of going to hell. And
I'm trying to think. What was that?
yeah, I'm trying to remember
One
what.
of the prompts was like, "Do you think if they don't follow your religion,
Yes,
you're gonna go to hell?" It was
that's what it
something like
was.
that.
That's what it
Yeah.
was.
And all of the Muslims stood back. All of the Christians went for.
Yes, yes, yes. Right.
Yeah.
And then so but the and then your and so that was the majority of their answer, but your answer was more about you didn't say this, but I've heard you teach about this before about men being khalifa on earth and
Hmm.
what what the duty what our duty is
Yes. Yes.
in upholding, and making the world not trying to be cliche, but making the world a better place, right? And you
Yeah.
were coming from that angle, and they were coming from, well, if I don't, then
Yeah.
I'll have eternal damnation, right? And so
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to ask you about your approach and your idea, your conceptualization of because you didn't mention anything about heaven or hell
Yeah.
in your answer.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to that, but I'll start with what I think, if I remember correctly, what the point I was making then was. Again, I'm articulating as a Muslim, yes, but I would say as a student of the Quran and the tradition of the Prophet through the methodology of Imam W.D. Muhammad.
Hmm.
That's how I teach. So, you have all kinds of Muslims, and they all say they're teaching from the same book, and you know how that goes. But
Right.
I do believe that I can prove what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Whereas I believe they're just teaching from what they heard, what's been
Hmm.
passed down. A lot of them. Um, as a point of departure, it's important. I don't think I made this point as clear. I don't remember if I did. As a point of departure, most Muslims don't know this, but it's very clear in the Quran that the Quran itself, it comes from the same God who revealed to Moses and Jesus Christ and all of the other prophets. And the Quran itself is an explanation of the Bible.
Hmm.
This is probably one of the most overlooked issues in the study of the Quran and the delivering of the message of Islam to the public. So all of these subject matters, all of these issues are really to be put in conversation with what we have in the Bible. So this issue that I'm about to address then is what? The creation of man. Like, where does religion begin? Religion begins with the creation of the human being.
Hmm.
This is what we're told in the Quran. For example, God says he created man in the Quran. He says he created man to worship him. Man's purpose is to worship God. He was created to worship God. But that's a problem, really, if the average person sees worship as like church Sunday service. The word
Right.
in Arabic, which is a cousin or sister language of Hebrew, a sister language of Aramaic. So these languages are interconnected. Um, the word literally means to serve.
Mm.
And to serve somebody is to work. It's a servant. Like the word abd means a servant, someone
Hmm.
who is a slave, literally.
Hmm.
And to serve somebody is to work for them.
Hmm.
So God is really saying that he created man to serve or to work for him. But we know that God says in our book, and as well as it is in the Torah and the gospel, we know that God doesn't need anything. What can we do for him? So to work for him implies to fulfill or to work or to serve his will, to do that which he created us to do. Meaning, so when he says, I created man to worship me, it literally is pointing to the fact that God created man to serve a particular purpose
Mm.
by fulfilling a certain work in the world.
Mm.
Where is it? Where do we find it? Well, he says, I created him for this. So all we have to do is go to when he created man. Both books say that when he created man, we have 6 days of creation. And you have everything coming, the light and the dark. Remember, it always starts with darkness first, then light.
Mhm.
And then the waters are separated, then the land is separated, then the herbs come forth. You see what I'm, and all of
Mhm.
the creatures. And eventually it leads up to man. And the Bible people know that what it is saying is that man is the highest creation. He's the crown.
Mm.
He's the crown of creation. And the understanding of him being the crown of creation is clearly denoted in the fact that God said, let us make man. And this is Bible language. It's not Islamic language, but the logic is consistent to a strong degree. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let him have dominion over all of these things. And then in the second part of Genesis, that second chapter, he says he brought all of these creatures to Adam, and Adam gave them names.
Mhm.
And he tells the man, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Now, how could that be referring to sex when all of these creatures have sex? But you just told me I have dominion over all of them. I can't out sex a monkey or out sex a roach. There's all kind of roaches crawling around. But so the question becomes, and the theologians of the church know, and the rabbis know, because I've read their books. I know they know. What is it that gives man dominion is his intellect.
Mhm.
So the creation of Adam is not, it's not important, his body absent his intellect. He's really just an animal. But God gave man an intellect. That's why he's able to name things in the garden. So, in other words, then, the human being as an intelligent creature with the ability to imagine, with the ability to think and create and produce, it is what puts him above every other thing that God created. And the only thing that God asks of him, I'm still in the Bible, is to don't eat from this tree. Now, we can simplify that message. There's a lot of meaning attached to this, but we can simplify it by the only thing that works against our best interests as human beings is not obeying God.
Mm.
I created you as an intelligent life. You can think, you can reason, you can create, you have dominion over everything. Do whatever you want. Just don't disobey my command.
Hmm.
If you do, you'll lose your life.
Mm.
We know this remains true because we fast forward all the way to the covenant of the Jews and Moses with his people. I'm giving you my law. As long as you hold to the law, your land will produce fruit. You will become rulers over the land. The people will fear you, so on and so forth. Just don't disobey the covenant. God's way stays the same. So when they disobeyed, what happened to the Jews? They were expelled.
Mm.
When Adam disobeyed, he was put out. It's the same. It's the same motif. It's the
Mm.
same theme. That the story of Adam is telling us what religion is. This is what God created man to do.
Mm.
So it's the productive man. Because look, what happens to Cain? Cain, we know he slays his brother, but afterwards, after God forgives him, he becomes an agriculturalist like his father. But then he builds a city. Then his sons, they become ironsmiths and metal workers, and they build instruments, etc., etc.
Mhm.
And this is how civilizations spring out from the sons of Adam. So God created man to be a worker, to serve his will, and his will is for the man to be fruitful and multiply in the earth by being an intelligent, creative producer. This is
Mm.
clear in scripture.
Wow.
So where do we get now? So now someone has to explain, where do we get this? Let's go sing and shout until we fall out.
Yeah. Where does that come from?
Where does that come from?
Mhm.
So now, why is all of that necessary? First, because where was Adam in the beginning of all of this? He was in the garden.
Mhm.
He was in the garden. God put him out of the garden only when he disobeyed. Religious life is literally, we say heaven, but in the Quran and in the Bible, it's the garden.
Mm.
The whole of religious life is to get back to the garden.
Mm.
Religious life then is to bring us back to that life of, again, that same description of intellectual, etc., creativity with moral obedience to God. Again, so that's why I referenced the Jewish covenant. You all have this promised land. This is your land. It will produce from you. It will be fruitful. Your harvest will grow. You will be safe. You will be protected from your enemies. The people of the world will fear you. At the height of their kingdom, the people of Ethiopia, of Egypt, of Assyria, they all came to hear the wisdom of Solomon. They were in the height of civilization.
Mm.
So the Jewish teachings weren't talking about die and go to heaven. They were
Right.
talking about this.
Right.
When they were expelled, that's when the hope for the Messiah came. And the Messiah was his job to lead them back into the kingdom. Fast forward to the New Testament when Jesus Christ says, I'm the Messiah. This is why it was a threat to the Roman governor, because the Messiah was a political term.
Right.
I'm going to lead these people back into their kingdom where they're fruitful, where they're productive, where they're building their own civilization. That's what it was about. If you read the book of Ezekiel, and he takes Ezekiel to the valley of dry bones,
Mhm.
and he says, prophesy unto the four winds. And he brings the bones together and they stand up out of the graves. Read what said. It said, these dead bones are the children of Israel.
Mm.
And their resurrection is them coming back to the homeland. So
Right.
even the teaching of the resurrection had nothing to do with people coming out of their physical graves. It had everything to do with them rising up again as a people coming into the life God created them for. That's Bible now. These are like actual verses you can read. The problem is people don't read. It's
Yeah.
not that people don't read. People are not encouraged or taught to read by
Right.
the preachers. So the whole message, you got to think about this now. God is God.
Mhm.
You and I don't have time for petty stuff.
Mhm.
You know, we got wives and children and things we want to do. And someone says, oh, someone said they didn't like you. It's like, so? Why you stop me for that? So now you're telling me God, who made all of this, is somehow of such a, Islamically we don't say of such a nature, but because God doesn't have a nature, but God is attributed with this, like his way is to, you don't acknowledge me, so I'm gonna burn you in hell for 10 billion years,
Right.
burn
Right.
you in fire for 10. Humans are not like that.
Right.
So when you read the church doctrine, like the Catechism of the Catholic Church, they say we don't know what hell is.
Mm,
Maybe it's just the fact that a person won't be in the presence of God.
mm,
When they die, that's it. But the people who love God and devote them, they'll be in His presence. Their soul, this internal activity, will never go away. They have higher readings of it. So I think that most of the Christians don't know their own religion, and then most of the Muslims don't either, because of the way religion has been taught traditionally.
mm,
So heaven and hell. So heaven and hell for us begin in the Quran now. Getting strictly to Quranic language, heaven and hell begin in this life, and this side of the world is where we work for heaven, and
mm,
we experience it on this side. Just how what I just explained, it was more like cultivation and building up the world, but also internally, the morality, the intelligence, the refinement of the soul, all of that. My soul is a garden. My family is a garden. My neighborhood is a garden. And I'm supposed to be just like Adam was put over the garden, I'm put over my own soul. I'm given responsibility over my own family. I'm given responsibility over my own neighborhood and nation. Cultivate all of that. And then the degree to which I'm sincere in the effort to cultivate that, that's what I'll get after I physically pass away from this world.
mm,
Hell begins in this life. Hell is described in the Quran, or the fires of it. It means that one of the descriptions is that it leaps above the heart. It begins when appetite, passions, emotions become so dominant in the thinking and behavior of a person that they're no longer thinking rationally, behaving rationally, or with good sense or with good moral sense. They are behaving and thinking, and their whole being is consumed by those appetites, those lower desires. That's the beginning of hell. So we don't know the detail of what happens to them after they physically die, but we know that it's the result of what they got here. Specifically if they were innocent, they were not innocent.
mm,
Sometimes people are like Frankie Lyman, Why Do Fools Fall in Love? You know, he died about because of overdose. But when you hear his story, a woman gave him heroin when he was a kid.
mm,
We grew up in the crack baby era. Those people are different. Those people are excused because in Islam, actions are by intention. Nowadays, children are exposed to pornography at such a young age; it burns itself in the brain. So that's different. The big, and if you notice when you read the Quran, the people who are really talked about, like Pharaoh,
mm,
the chiefs of nations, because it's the chiefs. You and I, we didn't put naked women on TV. We only had the money to do that.
mm. Right.
And who's behind this?
Mm,
Who is the one promoting this?
mm,
Those are the big devils that God really promises hellfire to. Our
mm.
fire is little. You know, I can't stop watching pornography, or I got a cigarette. I got to keep smoking and say that's little. That's little stuff. If this world wasn't so corrupt, we would never be looking at that stuff or smoking that stuff.
Right.
So that's what the big fight is against.
Indeed, indeed. And kind of going back to the church a little bit, and you've mentioned earlier, friends that you grew up with who may have been attracted to Islam, right? But and you used to hear comedians on Def Comedy Jam talk about, yeah, man, I would be a Muslim, but I can't stop eating pork, that kind of thing.
The Pope.
Yeah, yeah, they used to say, they used to say that often, right? But that would be like one of those running jokes, I
Yeah,
guess. But what I'm asking is,
that's right.
um, the idea that, okay, Jesus died for my sins,
Hmm.
and then I can pretty much do whatever I want, whatever I like, and ask for forgiveness, compared to the idea of I am going to be disciplined and
Hmm.
follow the rules and regulations of uh, rules and regulations of Islam. Like,
Hmm.
do you think that this produces, I don't want, and I'm not, this isn't for a lack of a better term because I'm not putting, one person above the other, but
Yeah.
right, but this produce, um, I guess, a better way of thinking in man.
Yeah. Yes. But to be fair, the church doesn't really teach that.
Mm,
Jesus died for your sins, therefore all else is forgiven.
hmm
That's more so a misconstrued approach to the teachings of the church. That's people who want to go have some alcohol and some legs. You know what I mean? Jesus said, that ain't the teaching of the church, man. The church teaches be moral, be truthful.
That
You know
is
what I
true.
mean?
That is true. That is
Yeah, so people take that and run with it. But I do think, and then of course, I think the bigger problem for the church is original sin,
true.
which is not an original biblical teaching either. It comes from Saint Augustine.
Hmm
At least he's probably his chief, the formulator of it. And the idea that we're born in sin
hmm
and that we need the blood of Jesus to atone for our sins. Uh, we need to accept his atonement or whatever, accept that sacrifice. That the first part of that we're born in sin. Again, we're going back to psychology. Like if I tell you you are deficient, we
hmm
know this now psychologically. If I tell you you're deficient in any way, you know, if I say, well, it's like that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The
hmm
poor dad is teaching his son in a certain way where he just internalizes poverty, impoverished behavior. He's
hmm
going to act it out. So to tell someone they're born in sin, instead of like in the Quran, it says, indeed, we created the human being in the most excellent form.
hmm
This means then that Satan is weak, man is strong. This
hmm
world makes Satan strong and they make man weak. And Muslims have misconstrued this too because there's a verse that says the human being has been created weak, but the verb is khuli. See, when Allah says He created him in the best mode, it's khaliqa. It means the past. God did it. Khuliqa means that it has been done, but we don't know who did it.
hmm
And what it's saying is that God created man in the best mode, but the man was recreated. He's recreated or refashioned by Satan
hmm
in his world. We're made weak in this world.
hmm
And those teachings of original sin help to do that. So that's probably a bigger problem.
hmm
But I think another thing that works against the Christian people that we have working for us in Islam, and this makes us more akin to the Jews or Judaism, is that we have a way of life. Like, what does a Christian do? What's their day consist of in terms of their worship? I know when we were children, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. You may pray when you wake up, but these are sort of like arbitrary things. Like it's not a institution. Whereas for us in Islam, we have a disciplined prayer.
hmm
We can pray to God, but you can do that anytime. But we have a disciplined prayer. It comes parts of the day. We have like the month of Ramadan, a fasting. Well, I know the Christians have Lent, but we have to. The fasting is a way that it has to be done. There's a certain set of devotions. So Muslim life is a life of, again, work. It has to be lived. You have to do it. Meaning, what I mean when I say you have to do it, meaning that you don't we're not just cheerleaders for
hmm
God or cheerleaders of the prophets. Like, yeah, that's right. I believe in my guy. My guy's going to win. We have to actually get into the game. Like, this is what we do. And it's a discipline, it's a set of disciplines. So our life is much more structured. And I think because of that, it's more real. The body, like the people who study trauma, like the one guy wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Things that you experience with your body,
hmm
it impresses itself upon your the neurological system
hmm
and your nervous system, and it impresses itself upon your hindbrain. So when you have to wash up for prayer daily, get up at certain times, go through certain motions, fast, like our body is engaged in our religion, not just our tongue. You see what I'm saying?
hmm
There's some clear dietary things. Everyone knows we don't eat pork, but it's more than pork. We don't consume intoxicants. We don't consume really any unbecoming animals. So an animal that would be like a predator,
hmm
like a lion or something like that. We don't eat lion. Um, or animals that are filthy, like monkeys. We wouldn't eat monkey head or something like that. So there's a way that, and then the way we have to cover
Hmm.
Muslim, not just the women, men and women. Muslim men can't show their bodies either. We don't think about it as much because it's just not fashionable to do in our society. No one
Right.
cares about a shirtless man, but we can't walk around shirtless.
Hmm.
Most Muslim men, even me, a lot of times when I go live or if I'm giving a khutbah or something, most Muslim men in the Muslim world cover their hair as well.
Hmm.
So there's a modesty. So again, it's just a total life. We have to take a bath. And these things kind of seem regular, but they were novel in the history of the world. Like for our Friday prayer, we have to take a bath. If you have sex, you have to take a bath. And imagine now you're a married man and you're having sex 3, 4, 5 times a week. You're going to the Friday prayer. You're bathing every day.
Hmm.
You and your wife. This is something that people didn't do. Europeans, they said in the Victorian age, Queen Elizabeth or whoever it was, she bathed like once in her life.
Right.
Muslims have to bathe every day. I mean, that's if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I got you.
And if you're not bathing, you at least have to make the wudu. Like if you're not having sex, you still have to make the wudu where you're cleaning major
Hmm.
parts. So, oil, perfume is big now, but the oil industry is huge in the Muslim world because that's what they did. They put on good smell. So we have a life that how we dress, how we smell, how we everything. It involves how we eat. It's encompassing. The Christians, especially in America, they don't really have that. Like what do the Christians? They eat any and everything.
Well, look, I've seen videos where some are admitting that they still don't take baths
They still don't
once a
bathe.
year. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
brother, I'm
still.
telling you. Look, look. The prophet. This is no lie. The prophet forbade us even how we use the bathroom. He said, he recommended we squat.
Hmm.
So there's a thing in our culture like I'll sit down, I'll stand up to pee, but you get a splashback.
Hmm.
And for your prayers to be valid, you can't have urine on your clothes.
Hmm.
I remember like so this world that we live in, it's a lot of heathen ways to it. I'm not calling our people heathen. The heathen practices really come from Europe, but we've picked up European behavior. You stand urinating, and you put it in your pen. You could feel that drip. I was a young boy. I remember that drip going down your leg. You got pee on you, and you running around all day like that. Are you having sex? And then you go to the movie with sex on you.
Yeah.
The fluids. You a heathen. That's heathen because it stinks. You see, and when you're smoking cigarettes, your breath stinks, your
Mm.
teeth get yellow, you're drinking alcohol, it's corroding your body. So, you're eating 10 times a day, all of these things. And what does this society do? It's really exploiting us. So the Christians really don't have a strong defense against being exploited. And another thing I would say, and I'm not knocking the church. The
Yeah,
church,
for
I
sure.
mentioned this. I don't know if they played this in the
Mhm.
Jubilee video, but I mentioned this at the outset that we really have to give the black church credit from a historical lens because
Absolutely.
up until the civil rights movement, the church has been in the forefront of our freedom struggle as a people. But
Absolutely.
we have to also acknowledge that since the civil rights movement, the church has really gone down the tubes on the whole in terms of their moral position. And because of their moral weakness, they're intellectually weak, they're politically weak. So we may have the Black Caucus, but the Black Caucus doesn't do anything
They'll
but
sell you
sleep
out
with
too.
each other. Yeah, yeah. Swap keys and sleep with each other. They
Hmm.
don't do anything for us. Even right now, and I mentioned this on my channel, this is not to knock the brother, but it shows where our thinking still is because the black church is the product of the white church. It's still a remnant of our experience here. Many times the Christian will say, well, there was a church in Ethiopia in the Ethiopian Bible, but that's not what y'all read.
Right,
And that's not
right.
what that white man gave you. He gave
Right.
you King James Version, stomped down Methodist, Baptist, like tell the whole story. So I acknowledge that history, but that's not what we're under.
Mhm.
So even right now with this big, the CEO of Target is, if he didn't step down, he's supposed to step down. And the blacks in the church, particularly, and some church leaders, they're seeing this as a major victory. But you think about it. Okay, so what if Target says, okay, black man, we're going to put your products back in our store? What have we really gained other
Mm,
than a select few of us being put upon a store, the shelves of stores that we don't even own?
right.
They say that Target lost so many hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, you mean to tell me where's the effort of the black leadership that's involved in this protest right now saying, hey, let's build our own stores?
Mm,
Let's get our own product.
hmm.
We have African American geniuses who could make shampoo and dish detergent and all of that. Why is there? And the black Muslims have been on that page from day one.
Mm.
And so I think that there is a, this is more than what you asked, but it
No,
just
it's all right.
moved me in this
Hmm.
direction. I think that there is a, there's something, there's an ingredient in Christianity, at least how we have it, that keeps us in a dependent state. It keeps us dependent.
Yeah.
We don't really think we can go anywhere without the white man. No matter how much black and bold talk we talk, uh, he's still daddy to a lot of us.
I think in a way, also too, that's why white people in America kind of, they hate to see brothers and sisters who are Muslim because it represents something politically at times that they aren't ready to deal with. One question that I wanted to ask you, because I think it's important, just for people who are studying. I read, I read. Mustafa Briggs's one of his books. I believe it was about I guess black presence in early Islam. I forgot what the name. That might
Beyond
have been
Bilal,
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and so that's what I wanted to kind of ask you. Um, you know, First off, I want to ask you about Bilal and
sure.
who was Bilal, but also Bilal tends to be the only one mentioned in a lot of times whenever we are talking about blackness in early Islam, when some of the actual studies show that many of the Sahaba were what you would consider black these days.
Yeah.
But can you just, talk a little bit about who Bilal was, and also, I guess, a little bit of the early presence of blackness within Islam?
Oh yeah. So Bilal was as we know, he was a companion of the Prophet, praise and peace be upon him. But he was the first muezzin, which is the first one to call to prayer.
Hmm.
So most people, Muslim or non-Muslim, have heard, the Allahu Akbar, like that caller calling to prayer. And he was given that role by the Prophet himself. But his story began, he actually was the child of an Ethiopian woman, and his father was actually Arab. But he was a slave. So he was an enslaved African who, upon hearing the message of Islam, accepted it. And he was so staunch in his acceptance of Islam that his life was threatened. His slave master, his owner, would torture him, basically, but he would hold on to his belief. Eventually, he was freed by one of the Prophet's closest companions, and then Bilal he joined the Muslims. But he was at that time, society was tribal, and you needed protectors, uh, people to protect you, so that because you were in this precarious situation if you didn't belong to a tribe. So he was very much exposed to a lot of abuse early on. But he was one of the staunchest and closest companions of the Prophet. So he became the first caller to prayer. What's overlooked, I think, a lot of times in the discussion of him is that even the language beyond Bilal, I don't really like that name. I actually was going to address it in that
Hmm.
book that I just came out
Oh
with.
yeah, you're talking about the Mustafa Briggs book, right?
Yeah,
Beyond. That's what it's called. Yeah, Beyond Bilal.
yeah.
Hmm.
I don't like that language. I know what he's saying, and
Hmm.
I've heard other people use similar language. They're saying that they were more companions or people of notoriety, or people to be noted other than Bilal. But when we're dealing with scripture and when we're dealing with religion, we're dealing with representatives or types.
Hmm.
And Bilal typifies a particular struggle and a type. No, mind you, scripture deals with types.
Hmm.
So Bilal, not only was he, so what do I mean? There are two in any masjid across the earth, if it's following the tradition of the Prophet. Now they have boards and all of this. And not to say that boards, like board of directors are bad, but they're following the Western structure, 501c3, just to get tax status.
Hmm.
But the way the Prophet established it, you have two offices in a masjid, the Imam and the Mueddin.
Mm,
The Mueddin is the one who calls the people to prayer. The Imam leads them.
mhm,
And in many parts of the Muslim world, if the Imam is not present to lead for whatever reason, the Mueddin is the one who leads the prayer. He
mm,
takes his place. And again, in a Muslim society, we make our prayer from dawn until the last bit of light at nighttime. So the muezzin calling the prayer 5 times a day, he actually regulates the time, like the church bells, for
mm,
example. So like in the West, we wake up, rush hour traffic, 8 hour workday, rush hour traffic, prime time television. Like that's how our time is. We have the weekends. Well, in an Islamic country, the day, the time, like how we spend our time is regulated by the prayer,
mm,
ideally. So the muezzin is the one actually regulating society in its movements. It's an extremely important job. So Bilal was that. He also was a treasurer. He was the one that the Prophet sent to collect wealth
right.
when it was time to collect the wealth of the people. He would carry the Prophet's staff when it was time to go to war. So he had a very significant job, and these jobs typify something that's of immense importance. For example, Joseph was a slave.
Mm,
And Joseph also was eventually put over the storehouses
mm,
after he was liberated from slavery. He
mhm,
collected the wealth.
mm,
He the even Jesus Christ, it says in the New Testament that he came from Nazareth, and the people would say about that town, what good could come out of Nazareth?
mm,
So God's way, if scripture is correct, he created the man we talked about earlier from mud, right? He created man from dust of the ground, from mud. Moses had a speech impediment. He was from the slaves, and the wife of Pharaoh picked him up upon the river. Joseph was put in prison before Moses. He was made a slave first, then put in prison, and then lifted up highest in society. So God's way is to take the lowest and lift them highest,
mm,
to take the ones that are socially rejected and make them the ones who are leaders for everyone else. That's what we see in Bilal more than anything. So it's a prophetic type. Not that he's a prophet. I'm saying it's a type that prophesizes or speaks to God's way. The Arabs themselves, they claim their lineage from the other son of Abraham, Ishmael. Ishmael in the Bible, Ismail in Arabic, and Hagar. Hagar was a slave.
mhm,
And the story goes that she was in the wilderness of the valley. Really, they were on the brink of death. And then God blessed her. We have this well, Zamzam, until this day. So she's the mother of that town, Mecca, an African woman that Mecca, the city today. So, and Ishmael is half African. So God always takes the low, the slaves, the rejected, the ignorant, and lift them up. Bilal fulfills that. He's in that picture as well. So that's why he typifies in many Africans in the history of Islam. Many African Muslim movements have pointed to Bilal as a figure
mhm,
representing them, representing us. So that's why I don't like that language. I would say I would have used something else
mhm,
like in the shade of Bilal,
mm,
or in the light of Bilal, or
yeah.
the light of Bilal, or the black light, or something like that. You know how like
Mhm,
light has you put a pure light in a prism and it has levels.
mhm,
All of these other black companions and great black figures are like a part of the spectrum that leads back to the transparent light of Bilal. That's
mm,
that's how I would in picture from a spiritual lens. So, but there were others. Osama, for example, who lived with the Prophet, who they say that if had it not been for if the if the if the if he had not passed away, he would have been the leader after
mm,
the Prophet passed instead of Abu Bakr, who was a black man. The woman who raised the Prophet, his mother passed when he was a young boy, and it was a African woman who raised him. Like in those times, you still have it today. Like in West Africa, you have like this woman who's like a servant, and
Yeah.
so he tends to the family. So he was raised by his grandfather and his uncle, but there was this African woman who was by his side his whole life, who he called his second mother. So you have this in the early community. Some of the early descendants of the prophet's household, like from his daughter Fatima, she has a baby. She has children with Ali, and from their children come other children, and some of them are reported as being, again, like you to your point, what we would call today black people. And then one of the early students of Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas is sort of like the imam, meaning like the founder of what we call tafsir, exegesis of
Hmm.
Quran. One of his students was, not only was he black, he was very dark, but he was like special needs. He was missing like a part of his limb, but he was known as the scholar of Mecca.
Hmm.
And then the main style of recitation that you find in 95% of the Muslim world, interestingly enough, it goes back to a man who was very dark. It's funny though, the style of recitation that's most popular in West Africa, it goes back to a man who's very known to be very white. Uh, so, and then of course, you fast forward and then you have all of these great figures, Uthman Danfodio,
Hmm.
uh, Ahmed Baba, just these great saints and luminaries, political leaders. Everyone knows about Mansa Musa.
Hmm.
The story not too often told about Mansa Musa, how he became the leader, how the one preceding him, Abu Bakr,
Yeah.
Mansa Abu Bakr, they sailed the seas. Uh, and we believe that they ended up in the Americas because some archaeologists have actually found Mandinka inscriptions and artifacts in Mesoamerica or in the Caribbean, South America, perhaps too. There's some reports that Christopher Columbus said when he came to the Americas, one of the first things he says in his writings that he saw was a masjid, things like that. So the history of Islam and Islamic civilization in Black Africa is extremely rich. And the writings show from the Africans themselves, and this is something that Mustafa Briggs, so I like his book. A lot of these things have been said, but I think he adds some things and he puts it in a book in a way that I don't think was readily accessible to the public. You had to
Yeah.
like get books by Ivan Van Sertima or get books by European writers to kind of gather this stuff. Uh, so the majority of it I like, and he's done a good service to the Muslim community in this regard, because when people think of Islam and Muslims, like today, Africa has like 500 million Muslims. Again, we talk about Hagar, the mother of Ismail, who isn't, the mother of the Arabs. The Arabic language is considered to be an Ethiopic Semitic language. No, I'm sorry, Ethiopic is a Semitic language. The Ethiopian language is akin, it's a relative to Arabic and Hebrew, etc. And again, to quote what another thinker, spiritual leader in Islam has had to say, which is true, 75+% of the narrations that occur in the Quran, like the story of Joseph, like the story of Moses, these things actually take place in Africa.
Mm.
So Africa is like, if we were talking about a movie like Black Panther, how much of it is takes place in Wakanda as opposed to, like when they were in, what was it, North Korea or South
Yeah.
Korea at one part. A huge amount of the scenes in the Quranic stories take place in Africa. So that's just a fact.
Right.
So that research is good. But that's who Bilal is, and those are some of the great figures that I believe every human, obviously, but I think very specifically every African American, whether you're Muslim or not, should know about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brother Rashad Abdul-Rahmaan, I've had such an amazing build with you, man. I
For sure, me too.
appreciate you just taking the time. I know you are a busy man and you know travel a lot, and thank you for just taking the time and coming to talk with us here. And
Oh,
Can't
thank
wait
you for
to
having me,
read.
man.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to read the book. Once I read the
Yeah.
book, I'm gonna hit you up because I have some more questions, I'm sure. But thank you for all your work. Again, here I like to highlight our perspectives and just help continue to orient us in a direction that I feel like is beneficial to us, and you're one of the many voices within our community that I think is extremely valuable. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you for having me, man. Anytime. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.